So my name is Brian Kemboy. I'm a software engineering student in Kirinyaga University. I'm also a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, and I'm a passionate software developer. I'm always uh, enthusiastic about even making changes in my community. Like as I continue to learn something, it's always my dream to see that I'm impacting somebody's career. So like for instance, having the C Sharp series is something that I would wish also my community to know something about it. And today we are having my co-host. I would like Omolo that you can be able to introduce yourself and then let the attendees know like who you are, what have you been doing, because I am very sure that in the next coming sessions we'll be having more and more sessions with you, and each and everyone else is invited to like joining us through the sessions. Anyone who wishes to be part of presentation and making this series is welcomed. Welcome.
Okay, thanks so much, Brian Kemboy. As has been mentioned, my name is Omolo Oganda. I'm a computer science student at JKUAT, and my current milestone in the program is beta. I'm also a software developer, and currently I am actively building on a project called Comrade Swap, which is aimed at helping students to ignite their campus business journey. So it enables you to establish a shop online and also sell your services and products to fellow comrades or any other person who might be interested in your service. So yeah, I'm very excited to be part of this team in this C Sharp series, and I hope to interact with us more as we learn from one another. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the session.
All right, thank you so much. We also have Dennis Kaduri. Dennis Kaduri also will be part of us in the journey of preparing our community into the C Sharp series. The C Sharp.net, or let's call it .NET Conf, that's going to happen in November. Um, in this series, we are trying to ensure that each and every one of us gets an idea of uh, how .NET actually works, what you can be able to develop with it, and I really hope that at the end of these sessions we are going to be somewhere. So Dennis Kaduri, you can also briefly like introduce yourself, and then we get started.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian Kiboy. My name is Dennis Washira, also a student at Kirinyaga University, doing computer science, and also got Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. I'm also a software developer, and we are currently planning for the .NET config. So stay tuned. Coming November, we'll have some great shows about the release of .NET 9 and the ecosystem of the C# community. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the session for today.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. So I'm going to move directly to the second slide, and I want to confirm if my slide are visible to everyone.
Yeah, it's visible on my side.
All right, so Dennis and Molo Ganda will be helping me through the chat. Whenever somebody has a question, you can also unmute and be able to ask a question. So today we are going to be learning the control flow structures in C Sharp. Um, we've been able to have some sessions before this, and the sessions were very beginner friendly. But as we go, this now like at an intermediate level, and I'm going to be taking you through this and trying to explain all the concepts, like how I'm explaining them to a beginner. So I hope that this session is going to be fun to you. My next slide is let's try and understand what is control flow. Now, we've been doing much of programming, and I'm very certain that most of us in this call, we are doing a course that is more related to tech. We may be doing computer science, doing software engineering, BBIT, all those. You've come through most of your programming, and there's some points where you have to make your computer make decisions based on the input that it has. For instance, when you talk about control structure is making sure your program executes certain part of code in a sequence. This is a flow chart I have over here, and it's most of the time it's always used for decisions. Trying to know if a program should terminate, a program should print something to a user, and all that. So I'm going to also show whatever we're going to learn today on control flow structures. So the name was something that maybe can be new to somebody, but whatever it means is that we're going to be writing some if-else statements, the if-else ladder. We'll be talking about the switch statement, the for loops, while loops, the while loops, and the for each loop. So my slides were very not that much because right about next we're going to be doing the demo, and demo is even that helps you understand all these concepts that we are planning. And at the end of the session also we'll be having some questions that I can be able to give to my members so that you can be able to try them. It's always good practice to try these things out when you are alone. Try and see if it works, and I hope it will be all good. So next I'll be sharing my screen. And let me just give you a minute as I share my screen. Okay, I think my screen is now visible. I'm on my Visual Studio Code. And we shall be running most of our sessions on Visual Studio Code because I find the other editor, that is Visual Studio, being very heavy because they always recommend that if you want to learn C# or any .NET, you can have the best editor as Visual Studio. But the team that have been working with Visual Studio Code, they have made it possible that running C# using Visual Studio Code is much easier and lightweight compared to Visual Studio. I think to maybe discuss about these two, we always have, because if someone will like confuse and try and say like, I think the names are similar. Yes, the names are similar, but they mean two different editors. So this is Visual Studio, and then we have Visual Studio Code. And all of them are allowed. You can be able to use any that you wish. So you can see this Visual Studio Code, it has this different icon. So if you want to download this and proceed with it, you can go with this. There was someone who was asking this question because during the day, there was someone asking from a WhatsApp group that how can I be able to run C# in Visual Studio Code? So the other one is Visual Studio. You can also visit the downloads and you can have that. So whatever you choose to run C#, it is from your own choice. But I chose to go with Visual Studio Code because these are an ID that most of us are having, and they can't have a challenge of running it, especially if your machine maybe has a RAM that is slower than maybe 8 GB. You can choose to go with Visual Studio Code. Okay, while running also C#, we have extensions that helps you give intelligence to your code. So for instance, if you go to your extensions and be able to go through it, there's this extension made for C#. It's known as C# Dev Kit over here. So you have to install this extension. So it comes with IntelliSense, so that whenever you'll be writing your code, it kind of like give you predictions of things like methods that you want to use, and also making your C# code be organized. Okay, so over here, so I have this extension, and then last thing that you should have, I think I forgot to show, is the .NET SDK. So .NET SDK is the one behind running of your C# code, because it has all the libraries set behind it, and having it is something that will always power your C# to work. Okay, don't know why that's taking long. It's here. So you just go to, just search something .NET SDK, and you'll be able to find different of them over here. So before you can see, we have okay, let's go for it, and then you can see the different. So this is the SDK, and the SDK is available for all the operating systems. Nowadays, you can run a C# code on any operating system, whether Windows, Linux, Mac, all of them. And the same applies to Windows, to Visual Studio Code. Right. So I'm going to proceed to creating today's project. So as always, while creating a project in C#, there's your normal traditional folder, which is this one. But once you've installed the C# dev kit, it's going to detect that you are running some C# code, and it will give you some Solution Explorer. So it's always recommended that while writing some C# code, at least you should work with this Solution Explorer. It's exact copy as your folder, so it's going to be the exact thing. So have your Solution Explorer. Then this is the main folder, the root folder. So you can be able to create a project. You see, whenever you hover around, it says this plus icon means that you can create a project. So when I click on it, it should display the command palette. Let's just give it some time. It's here. So as we're learning C#, we're running the console applications. So there are so many things that come with C#. You can see the ASP.NET empty projects and all this. So you can do so many things with C#, but because we're still learning the fundamentals, let's choose the console app. So I'm going to name this control flow. So writing a project, you see, you have to make it your default project and then create the project. So it's going to create its kind of a folder, and it's over here, control flow. So once I expand on it, it comes with some templates. And first of all, the first thing that you get to see is whatever it comes with the template, the dependencies, and so many other things. But we shall always be focusing on program.cs, especially to write our C# code. And with .NET 8, that's the version, can be able to write C# without the top level statements. If you've been able to interact with other languages like C programming, Java, you have to write quite a lot of code before you print out your hello world. And that is it. So I'll be proceeding to today's session. Okay, this is control flow. Let me just have everything that we shall be doing today over here. So I'll just paste them and then comment it. So so we have the if else. Let me just increase the level of my font sizes so that it can be visible to all. Right, so you can see we have the if else statements, if else, if later, the switch statements, the for loop, while loop, do while loop, and for each loop. So we are going to cover all this, and and I hope that at the end of the session we'll get an idea of when to choose each one of them, and then we're going to have the Q&A and also give you something that you can go and try out, and whoever comes with that gets some presents. Right, so let's begin with the if else statement over here. So the if else statement, so I'm going to write some code, int, can say int number is equals to 10. So I've initialized a variable. So int number is equals to 10. We'll say if number. So I'm going to use the operators that we learned last week, the modulus operator. So I'm going to also explain. So let me first write the code. Then over here, I'm going to console that it's even or else block it's code. Okay, an if statement. So an if statement is going to take some of your conditions. For instance, I've initialized a variable of type int and the value is 10. Now I'm going to confirm, hey, if this number is even. So how do you know that a number is even? The number is even if you do the number that is 10 modulus 2, you should be able to get 0. For instance, it means that if I do the 10 divided by 2, is it equals to 0? So that's the work of a modulus as we explained last week. And then if it is true, it's going to console or give us this output that is even number. Else, if this is not true, that if, for instance, we had the number as 11, for instance, we are going to say that the number is an odd number. So let's try out and see if this is working. So this is the first control flow that you'll ever see. So I'm going to just go through I want to go inside my project, that is control flow. Then I'm now inside my folder. Then I'm going to run. So to run the code is .NET run. Let's wait for it. So whatever is going to happen, we expect it to build. Whenever you run .NET run for the first time, it's going to build a project. And then you'll see some other code or folders that are created, like the bin folder. They are the machine code that has been interpreted from this human readable code. So let's give it some time to build. Anytime maybe something new comes in and maybe you have a challenge, you have the chance to ask your question. So you can see the number is even number over here. So whatever was saying that it's going to generate some other code, just go to your control flow or the default folders. You can see you have the bin, the object. So it kind of generates some other code for you when building the code. So this is an if-else statement. It's always the simplest of all, and it's widely used by programmers, especially when you check something. But what does if-else ladder do? So this is a repetition. So I'm going to comment that. So if-else. This is when you have several conditions. For instance, now you're only checking if a number is an even number, this is what you could do. But what if now you want to check several things all together? So I'm going to create a variable. Let's say int age is equals to 60, and say, first of all, if that age is less than, let's say, 18. So this person can be a minor, because if you are less than 18 years, that's someone who is a minor. But else, if age is something between 18 and 60, I think this is okay, whichever Copilot is giving me. This, like now I'm checking if age, this sign means that it's greater than 18 and age is less than 60. So this should mean that this person is an adult. But we can have somebody who is more than 60 years. We can say now else console.writeLine senior citizen. So you can see this is what exactly the if else statement does. You check multiple kind of conditions. So as said, an if statement takes something in brackets like a condition to check, and if it is true, it's going to execute. Now the else if it can be able to take two things to compare or arrange. This is an age between 18 and 60. So these are the operators we were able to talk about last week, and you can see as we continue to learn, most of the things that we've learned in the past are going to repeat itself. And the last block, if I don't have any other condition, I can say now, okay, if you're 60 years and above, then you're a senior citizen. So the last block, you can just give it as else. To test this out, I'm going to run .NET Run again, and let's see. You see, it's a senior citizen. So that one even number is being executed because I never commented this code. So all these codes will be available for you on GitHub. So I'll be sharing also the GitHub link so that if you want to try out with this sample code, you can able to try that out. So let's go to another one. I think the next one should be switch statements over here. So we are going to try all of this and see, and then later on, you're going to choose your favorite one. So switch statement. Most people don't choose to go with switch statements. I don't know if it's kind of challenging. People always goes for if else statement. But imagine if you had to check almost several, like let's say 15 conditions, having if else 15 times or more than 15 times could make your code not that good. So you have to have a better way to do that. And that's why the switch statement comes in. This for the switch statement, let me write a simple way to write a switch, and then let's include when a user wants to input some values. We'll take the user's input, and then we see how it happens. Okay, for this I can say int day is equals to 4. So we can say day 1 is Monday, 2 is Tuesday, 3, 4 until 7 is Sunday. And then I can say I have to switch. So to use switch, you have to use the keyword switch over here. So an intelligence is always available with you. So the moment you write switch, it's always available, and these are reserved keyword. We talked about reserved keywords that you can never declare a variable known as or use switch for your own cases. It's always reserved for C# to use. And then in here, the curly braces, now you can have your cases. For instance, if case is 1, we can say this is on Monday, and we can say, okay, let's console.writeLine Monday. And then we can break over here. So this is how cases takes place. We could have said, if it was an if else statement, you could have said if 1 or if day is equals to 1, console.log Monday. Now imagine again, we could do again the second one, case 2, console.log that is Tuesday, and then we have to break it. We have to go for case 3, and the same thing happens until maybe the 7th day. So that could be tiresome in that case. So I'm going to write all the 5 cases if it's on Friday, break it, and then I'm going to give a default in this case. So then I'm going to default and say, so let me make this code, okay, being my license is away. Okay. This is the structure of how a switch statement looks like, a very simple one. You have to initialize it with whatever you want to check. For instance, I've initialized a variable known as day, and the day I've initialized with a value of 4. So I'm saying that in this switch, if case is equals to 1, give it Monday, 2 Tuesday, 3 Wednesday, all the way to 5 is a Friday. Else, if somebody gives me any other number, I can say that's a weekend. And we can be able to run this code as easy as that. So I think from this session, we can be able to always prefer using switch more than if else statements multiple times. Okay, say control cannot fall out of case default. That is error in line 57. Let me check. So I'm going to break Then default, it's a weekend. We can't see. Okay, maybe I never read the error. We cannot fall out of switch. I'll fix the build errors and then back. I think this is written quite well. So that's default console. Okay, and then I never broken out from my loop. I think this was the problem. So once you also default out of the loop or the switch, you should be able to break out of it. So I think that was the error because they say cannot fall out of the switch because from here you can see it was not able to break out of default. So let me clear the terminal and then run it again. .NET Run, it's going to build, and you can see the day is on Thursday. If somebody was to have something like 7 over here, that will be a weekend. So this was simplest way of how to write a switch. I want to now ask to make it a way of in real world situation, like a real life situation, how could a switch be used? Because this is the simplest way. You can see this is on weekend. I wish to take user's input. For instance, I'm asking a user to tell me the day of the week that I want. Tell me the day of the week, and then I'll be able to give them an input. So for this, I can I'll still also initialize, or maybe let me give them a message and say console dot. I think this is it. Yeah, console dot write line. Enter a number between 1 and 7. So at this point, I'm guiding that user, and then I want to just give a space so that you can be able to write. So instead of write line, I want to just say console dot write. Console dot write will just write something to the console. It will not go to the next line. Then next, I want to take that. So like for instance, I can say here, I can say int day, the same day that I used. I want to pass it or convert it to a number. So I can say, instead of saying int pass, which can still do, I can say convert using a class known as convert. So convert to int. So int 32, this is it. So the reason as why we are converting is because console dot read line over here always returns a string in whatever thing that it reads from a user. So we have to convert whatever a user inputs over there into a string, into a number of, and a number or an integer is always type 32, or if you are using a float, it would be a different thing. So you're taking that day, you're inserting it in the day variable. In this case, I think we are ready to go. So a user will be giving us a number between 1 and 7, and we can be able to tell them what that day is. But in this case, we want to give them now an allowance, like now we can do this up to Sunday. So I'm going to also add them Saturday and Sunday. And for that case, I'm going to paste the code over here. So these are the cases, case 6 on Saturday, case 7 on Sunday, and I'm going to default. If a user gives me any other value, tell them the day is invalid. Please enter a number between 1 and 7. So I'm going to open my terminal, then clear, and then be able to run again. Let's see. So enter a number between 1 and 7. If I enter 6 in this case, it's on Saturday. If I repeat the same thing and I enter a number that is not specified between 1 and 7 in this case, let's say enter 90. It says invalid day, please enter a number between 1 and 7. So this can be a way to guide your users to give a specific input so that you can be able to make a decision and tell them whatever they were requesting from. That was a switch, and we've seen how it actually works. Let's talk about the for loops. Now we've talked about if, else, we've talked about the switch. Let's talk about a for loop and when to use a for loop. So a for loop is used to iterate. You can say in this case, it's used to iterate over some range of values for certain time. So you can see over here, it's used to iterate part of a program several times until maybe that condition is never met. Okay, I can proceed by saying, to use for loop, you have to use the keyword for. That's how to initialize it. And if you want to run something, you can say int. Mostly we use I. It's not a role. You can use any character that you want to iterate with. So I can initialize I with 0, and I is less than 5, or I plus plus. I'll be able to explain what are those. And then I'll be able to console.writeLine and see console.writeLine iteration of the number now letter I. Let's see what happens, and then I'll be able to explain whatever is happening in this code. .NET Run. You see the iteration began from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's discuss in detail whatever is happening in this. So for the for keyword is always being used for loops. And then you have to enter into these brackets. And first thing, you have to initialize any of the variables that you're going to use. For instance, now you say int I is equals to 0. So I'm saying that in this case, let me just add some comments. I'm saying now at this point, I is equals to 0. That's exactly what I'm saying. And then in the second thing, I'm saying I'm giving out a condition that I will always be, like the condition will always be true if I is less than 5. So the second one is a condition. And the first one is initialization. Then the last one is incrementing. For instance, what will make this I from 0 to 3 and then to 5? So at this point, I can say the I is a plus plus. So how will this code work? Because mostly when you're called for interviews and you're dealing with certain solutions, you have to explain like how something is happening in programming. For this, you've said the let I is equals to 0, then it will check if is 0 less than 5. That is true. It's going to print out this and then say the value of I is 0. And then goes back again. Here it increments to 1. After it increments to 1, it's going to check the condition. Is 1 less than 5? Yes, it's going to print again all over until when I is equals to 4, it's going to check the condition. Is 5 less than 5? That's false. And that's when your for loop terminates. So this was an easy way to explain how a for loop works. Let's cover also some real life example of how for loops works, because this was an easy way. So let me now bring in C# in an advanced way, or much not an advanced way, but in a situation whereby you'll always be using it. So I know we've not talked about collections and arrays, but allow me to just create an array. You can say int, so an integer of an array. So I'm saying these numbers that is between, let's say, numbers between 1 to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is an array. An array is a collection, or storing of a collection of some values. So for instance, I've said I want an array of numbers. That's why it's an int and giving the brackets over here. So it's an array of numbers storing values between 1 and 5. And in this case, I would wish to print the index and the value of it. So how an array works, this is something we will be covering next week. So for instance, 1 is index. So the index of 1 is 0. It happens all the way. For 2, index is 1. For 3, index is 2. All that way. So iterations of an array starts from 0 to 4. So in this case, the length of this array is equals to 4. So if I want to use a for loop for this case, I can say this is how you do it. So say int I is equals to 0. It's going to start from 0, and I will stop when the numbers dot length is reached. At this point, you can say numbers dot, or you can say when I is equals to length of 4. That's when you know the exact length. But sometimes you'll be having an array with almost 1,000 values in it. So in that case, you just check numbers dot length. Just check like how long that variable is, or that array is. And then we are doing the plus plus, just how we did it. So to print that, so I'm going to say console dot write line. So in this case, if I do this, I'm going to print out the values itself, but I would wish to print the key value pairs. So I could say at this point, let me use this kind of formatting when printing something in the console. This is a new way to do. I can say now the value at index. So now to get the variable, let's say now at I in the beginning is 0, then you say is. Now you can say now this is. Now accessing values in an array. Now this point you can say now numbers at I. So numbers at I is numbers maybe at 0, numbers at 1, numbers at 2, at 3, at 4, at 5. That's how to access values in an array. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to clear and I run again. Then see, so I'm told that in line number 81, an error syntax. Okay, let me see that. Line 81 over here. So I never close this. So this is how you read errors in C#. Like, don't always be in a rush to go to ChatGPT and getting solutions. For this, you see, you are told that the error is in line number 81, and then there's some other things that is written, so it expected some symbols and that. So, but once you get to know where the error falls in, just go to that line 81, and you could see that I'd forgotten to terminate my program. It happens always, especially if you're writing other programming languages like JavaScript and Python, whereby you don't have to terminate your code. So you might find yourself forgetting to close that. So again, I'm told numbers does not exist in the current context. Let's see. So I've said int numbers. Okay, I said int number, and I'm saying numbers dot length. So I have to add s to be the same variable that I'm using. So clear. So that's called debugging, but these are faulty mistakes. Let's check all out. So you can see now the value at index 0 is 1, just the same way I told you. The index at index 1 is 2, 3, all the way to the length or the index at 4. So in most cases, you'll be dealing with collections or arrays and looping them through and making some decisions with them in a program. So, okay, let's talk about another loop. Before we go to while loop, let's talk about nested loops. Because sometimes you might find yourself wanting to loop something inside another loop. So this is when maybe you want to do something maybe that are rows and columns. So let's try and write something that prints rows and columns. So for this case, I'm going also to give a for loop that starts from 0, ends at this time round to end it at 5, and I'm going to increment. So this is the first for loop, and then I want to have another for loop inside here. So the first for loop is going to print the rows. The second column is going to print the columns. think that is it. Yes, the first one always prints the rows, the second one prints the columns. So in this case, I'm going to initialize another variable, another for loop inside these blocks, by the way, and known as j. It is less than 5, but I want to do it less than 3, so that you can have 3 values in a row, then plus plus, and then also have this. So you can see like how you can be able to generate all these. Okay, I could use a star to see how it comes through, but I want me to use the actual values. I can say console.writeLine, but in this case, I want to have, let me string format this, say that I want the value of I, the value of j. I think this is it. And then the last statement I'll be doing is console.writeLine. Let's see what's the output of this, and then we discuss how nested loops works. So you can see programming is not hard. You need to understand fundamentals, especially if you've been working with other different programming languages. All right. Okay. Never came in as I expected. Let me check why that's so. I wanted it to give me some spacing. So first of all, let me introduce the I equals to, okay. Okay, let me start it with 1. And then if this is less than 5, then increment. Then for j is equals, let me start also this with 1. Yeah, and also give some space between here. I think I'd forgotten to give this comma so that I can differentiate between the row and the column. Let me increase the size of my terminal, clear it, then run. Then let's see the output that it comes with. Okay. Also, there's still some fault with it. It has not drawn it as I expected. So this is the I and this is the J. Anyway, I'm looking for a pattern. I want to give some kind of pattern. So the code is executing well, but just that I'm looking for certain pattern. So this I is equals to 1, that's 5. Then another for loop, J, 1, 3. Okay, I was writing instead of write line. I was wondering like why is that happening? So it's always been writing it to the next line. Let's say that. .NET run. Yeah, this was the pattern that I was looking for. Now it's now even aligned better so that you can be able to visualize why do we have 2 1s and then 1 2. A line is being skipped 2 1 2 2 3 1 2 2. So let's try and do this. How can I place my terminal to the right side? Anyway, let's see from the first for loop. So this the parent for loop. So for instance, at this case, let's write some scenarios over here, like what is happening in this. In this, we have int I is equals to 1. So in this case, we have I is equals to 1. I'm going to demo like only one loop, and then by default, you'll be able to know like how the code works. And then if A is equals to 1 and I is, that is 1 is less than 5, the code will now come to this point over here. This is the next part of execution. Now this point we said let j is equals to 1 and j is less than 3. So in this case, 1 is less than 3. We have to print out these two statements. So in this case, the output will become 1 and 1. So that will be the output because I'm printing out the value of I, that is 1, printing out the value of j, that is 1. So we have 1, 1. The code will still remain within the for loop until it becomes wrong. That is, if it goes back here, j becomes 2 because it is incremented. So is 2 less than 3? That is true. So it's going to print again. So it's also going to print the second wing, the value of I is still 1, and then we have 2. Then it increments to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No. Then this inner loop or the inner loop becomes false, and it has to go back to the parent. So the parents here, the I was still 1. You incremented it, so it becomes 2. 2 is less than 5. Yes, and then it comes in again. This loop starts again from 1, which is less than 3. It prints for the second time. In this case, because we went back to the top, we have this console.writeLine. It leaves one space, and then going to print the value of 2 now at 1, and the same thing at 2. So that's how it iterates until the outer loop becomes false. That's when the nested loops always stops. So it's always good for you to do these scenarios to understand if you get this right. So I'm going to move to the next one. I want to move to the while loops. So I hope no one was lost doing the nested loops. So if you want to understand nested loops, you can try and draw stars. A star that is in rectangular shape or triangular shape, circles, like trying to mimic or have those stars using nested loops and having them all together. That can be a way for you to learn. Let's do the while loop, and then we do the do while loop, and then we kind of understand like when do you use any of those. Okay, now with this I'm going to say int. Now I want to say, let's say count is equals to 1. I'm going to terminate it there, and then say while. So we use the while keyword and say count. Count is equals to 5 or less or equals to 5. So like the for loop or like the for loop, you could use for loop and then you could initialize something, check for the condition, and then increment. But in this case, the while loop only checks the condition. We're saying that while count is less than 5, what do I want to do? I want to print that iterator, or say at this point, let's use something else. You can say let count equals to this other count, and then increment it. I think this is all. So this is a simple way to write a while loop. So the syntax of a while loop and for loop is kind of different, but this is exactly the way to write a while loop. First initialize something. So let's see. So the difference, we've talked about the difference within a for loop and a while loop, but let's see how it works. So at this point, let's say we have, now at this point, you have value of count being 1. 1 is less than 5, which means this code will be executed. Let's see. It will execute it until the condition becomes false. So clear? See, count is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So in this case, let's say if it is 1, it's going to console count is 1. It's going to increment, go back. If it increments, then the value becomes 2. So it increments 2. Is 2 less than 5 the same? It's going to go on and on again until when the value is equals to 5. But one mistake that people always does with while loop, they always forget this count. Whenever you do this, you might find your code not executing as expected, and always remember to add this count plus plus. Like you're going to move to the next step. So if you forget to add the count to increment, your code might never stop. It will always be there because count will always be 1 and 1 1 all over and over again. So always remember to do that. So that was a while loop. Let's see a do while loop, and then we discuss the differences between a while loop and a do while loop. So in this case, I'm going to do the do while loop. So that's also the iteration of a program several times. For this case, I can say int count also is equals to 1. And then in this other in do while loop, you'll first have to use the keyword do, and then what do you want to do? The do is like you're telling the code, can you please do the following. You can say now, hey, I want you to give me the counts, and then after you give me the count, I want you to increment it by saying, okay, count plus plus, and then give out the condition. I can say here, while count is less than 5. So the syntax is almost same, but it's different. Let's see how the code is, and then we explain how it works. The .NET Run, we can see it has started from 1 to 5. Nice. So let's understand the differences between the two. So the do while loop will always print something even before checking a condition. So we've initialized a variable known as count. Inside the do, it will always print the first line of code, even if it is false. But whenever it increments and maybe goes for checking, if it is false, the program will terminate. But if it is not false, the program will proceed until this condition is false. Let's say, for instance, we say let count is equals to 0. We know this, whenever it gets to this point, it should be false. But guess what? This should be printed because we are first doing the printing and then we increment it. Okay, I think this will work because when increment 0 becomes 1, and that can be a challenge. So let me first say I give it 9. 9 will be the solution for this. Let me clear the screen and then run again. Right. So you can see the count is 9 and the program terminates because whenever it comes to check for condition, at this point, if I do the console over here, you can see the value change from even 9 to 10. So I'm going to give this count. So at this point, you expect it to become 10. Why? Because we have it as 9 over here. It's going to add it. Now it's 10 over here. So it's going to print 9, then 10, 9 and 10. And then you can see that the code died over here. It never reached this point of like executing, checking, and then going back once again. So that's a do while loop. All right, let's talk about the for each. So I think the last thing we're doing is for each, and then we talk about some quizzes that you can be able to try out for yourself as you practice this. So for each is special. I'll also be talking about the collections, even though we haven't reached there. I think we could be able to introduce collections today could be a cool thing. But for each is also going to iterate through a collection of items, like arrays, for instance. In this case, let me give an array of strings this time around. So you can say a string array. Let me give the fruits. Yeah, we have the fruits like apple, banana, mango, orange, and all that. So how can you be able to iterate and print out the values of this array? So this is how arrays are written in C#. So C# is fun because you always type everything that you have, because apple, for instance, is a string, but having several items in this curly brace becomes a collection, and whenever it becomes a collection, it can be a list or a string. And at this point, we define this as an array because we said string, and then we give these two angle brackets. That means this is an array of fruits. That is it. I'm going to use for each. Just use the word or the keyword for each. So I'm going to say now for each string, because we are iterating through a string, always remember to check the condition over here. So for each string, so I'm initializing another variable known as fruit. Remember, we had our variable fruits, that's in plural, but now in single we say fruits. So for each fruit in fruits. So now for each fruit that is an apple in, or for each fruit that's a banana in the entire collection, I want to do something with them. I want us to print out and see all this. So you can say console.log fruit. So it's going to go through apple, banana, mango, and then orange. So let's see what comes in. So you're going also to see the real time or the real life or kind of another way you can be able to use collections. You can see apple, banana, mango, and orange. All right. I want us to see how we can be able to use for each in most of the scenarios. That can be when you want to connect to a database and then you want to list everything that's available in your database. So for this case, we want to create a class outside over here because I never use top level statements. How can you create another file outside your control flow? So just make sure you're in that project that is control flow over here. Just click on this file. Then you'll have to see what the dev kit helps you to do. In other cases, you will just create a file and start naming it. But in this case, you can select a class. I want to name this class as a person because we want to create a class named person. And it's going to create for us, here it is. So we have person.cs. So these are a C# code. So what do we find with this? We have using system, these are namespaces. So the other namespace that belongs to the class person is called control flow. It's going to take the name of that project. And then here we can be able to write some things about that person. So in this case, I'm not going to write so much about the person. So I want to give how or the characteristics of how a person, of the things a person will have. So a person will have things like name. So don't worry much when object-oriented programming is not your thing. So we'll have a day also to talk about object-oriented programming in C#. But once we introduce this series, we have the recording on YouTube. So we talked about classes and objects because I knew these things could even be repeating itself before it's time to talk about object-oriented. In this case, I'm saying that a person will always have a name, and we'll always be able to set that name and be able to get that name inside this class. And it's of type string. Another thing that we can have is a person will always have an age. But I'll be able to come on back to the person because there's something I would wish to tell you that strings are always nullable. But once you see that on the terminal, there's some kind of suggestions that C# tell you to do about it. So this all I wanted to do with the class. So I've just given two properties, that's the name and the age. So I want to go back to the program.cs over here. So over the program.cs, I want to create list of persons or create other new people with it and then use for each to iterate over it. So you could say, I want to create a list. I want to write this list in an ordinary way of how people would write in the past, and then we improve on it. So I could say not fruits. I would say these people. So I could say is equals to a new list. So a new list of person. So I could say a list of person. Sorry. So a new list of person. This is the class that we've created. I'm going to name it people because I'll be creating different people. So it's going to be a new list of that person. Instead of repeating, and we shall improve on this. Let's see if this person was imported in the namespaces. It's like you have to import that namespace. So for this, I'm going to go to the top level, to the top part of my program, and tell C# say using it's called control flow here. So why am I using this? Because when you go back to your person.cs, we said the namespace. Namespace is how you organize your C# code. So in this case, I'm telling C# that, okay, like I'm going to organize everything. If we had different files, they could have their different like name spacing. So I'm using whatever is going to be available only here. So that is the namespace known as control flow. That's why I have to go inside my file using statement control flow. It's going to access over there. And once I have that using statement, I can be able to now create a new list of person. Now, I can be able to say now, okay, I want to create another list of persons this way. Let me have them. Let me bring some people to add in code. So I can say I want a new person, the name John, 25 years old, Jane, 30 years old, another person known as Doe for 35 years old. So I've created a list of person. Okay, I want to iterate and people to print out that. For this, you can say for person. Another time we were like now having to bring in a string. For instance, you could see over here, you could say for string person. But now we're using this other data type, or the type of whatever we're using is known as person. And it's going to take a variable known as person. So let this not confuse you. This person is the class and this is the variable. But now in people, which is the list, I want to print for console, the name will be person dot these objects dot name, and age will be person dot age. So let this not worry you much, because we'll be having a session of collections and we'll cover more on collections. .NET run. Yeah, you could see we have the name 25, or the name and the age, Jane, 30, this and that. So there was this error, that's not an error but a suggestion. You're being told that name must contain a null value when exiting the constructor. What does this mean? Once we go back to our person.cs, so this is whatever is being said, because C# will always construct or have its own constructor to access the name, so that you can be able to initialize a name and setting it over again. You have to be able to access the constructor, but it's telling you by default a string is nullable. But to avoid nullable, you can just say, hey, this is required in this case. I think I've typed it correctly. So I'm saying that public required. So you're saying like this name is required, so that whenever a constructor is being created, the string is being created. So with this, it's going to not give us that suggestion, and it's going to print without that. You can see, let's wait. Now you can see without any other suggestion, you can see now the name John 25 and the rest. But let's go back to program.cs. There's something that we've done that doesn't look good over here. We repeated ourselves when creating this list, like list person of type person, we're calling it people. So it brings a lot of confusion. So let's create this with a manner that is much simpler. That is, I want to use the var keyword. So instead of saying list and then also creating a new list over here, I can say var. So var is like a way to also to initialize your variable. So I can say var people over here is equals to a new list of person. So this is much better than doing this. So like now, this now will make your code to infer. So for instance, it will infer that instead of using var, it will infer that, okay, I'm supposed to create another list of people. So your C# code will be able to know what you're trying to do. Let's run that. And I hope I've not confused anyone. See, name John, age 25, and as well. So this can be a cool way to do this. You can use var for even any other thing. For instance, in our previous sessions, we've been using int I is equals, let's say 10. So this sometimes C# already knows that, okay, I is equals to 10 and it's an integer. You can still do the same by saying var I is equals to 10. So C# would always be able to know, like, okay, this is it's going to infer to it will help you change, or like it will help you infer the type of it. But you should not use var each and every time, because you are trying to type each and every line of code. So sometimes don't assume that C# will be able to give you the right typing. So it will do the inferring or trying to guess your type when like you like to always guess your type when it's something easy, like for example, something that's a 10 to a C# compiler, that looks like an integer. But when you're dealing with some other things like objects or different types like generics that comes in, you'll have to type it very strongly, like by saying int something. If it's a string, if it's a boolean, always indicate that. So at this point, I have completed what we wanted to present for today's session. So I'm going to go back to my slides. There's something that I would wish that we continue to learn. It's good for us to learn them. That is doing some practice with it. Let me wait for the slides to be up. And I'm going to go to the slide. So I'm going to resume back. Okay, we were at demo, and then went to do some quiz challenge. So these are the things that I would wish that you go try out and see if it works on your side. And anyone who comes with these challenges, I can't say like everyone, but those people will be up and very active with these. At least they get to go with some LinkedIn Premium. I always like to appreciate those people who get chances to attend sessions. And LinkedIn Premium is a good choice for you because you get access to learning resources for free, because LinkedIn is a paid service. So for instance, we have the first quiz, that is write a program that takes in a number from a user and checks if the number is prime number or not. So for this, something that you'll be able to try and know is checking if something is a prime number. What are the conditions or the things that you check for to know that something is a prime number? So just go do your research. Like for instance, a prime number is a number that's divisible by only itself and one. Then write a program. You can use either any of the things that we planned today, push them to GitHub. At least next week when we be able to ask like who was able to try that, you can show up for that. The second thing that you can be able to note is write a program that takes in a number from a user and checks if the number is a palindrome or not. So this question always appears in interviews, and it's good for you to know how to write a code that checks if something is a palindrome or not. A palindrome is something that can be read the same from front and from the back. And in this case, we're asking for a number. A number like 1, 2, don't know if I can have access to the pen. So a number like 1, 2, and 1, when we are reading it in front, you see it's 1, 2, and 1. But when we decide to read this number from behind, still 1, 2, and 1. So this shows that this is a palindrome. So we have other numbers that also reads the same as palindrome. We have 1, 2, 2, and 1. These are things that always demonstrate using data structures. So this number, when you're reading it front ways or back ways, still applies the same. And other different numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3, 2, 1. Reading it in front and back is the same. So that's a palindrome. Another thing that you can check is write a program that takes in a list of numbers from a user and calculate the sum of those numbers. What I mean by that is, for instance, we've learned how you can take an input from a user. So let's say a user gives you a list of numbers. A user can give you a list of numbers like 1, 2, 3, as an input, by the way, to something like 5. So if a user gives you this list of items 1 to 5, you are supposed to take all these as an array and be able to calculate the sum. So you'll take this, let's say, as an array of integer. You take this as an array of integer, calculate the sum. You can use a for loop to always iterate whatever list that user has given you, so that you can be able to add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. At the end of it all, give that user the result of the sum of that array or that number they give you. So simple things that you can be able to do. So if anybody has a question about this and maybe you never understood, I'll still be sharing it on our WhatsApp so that you can have access to this. Okay, I would wish to ask if anybody has a question.
Hello.
Yes, hello, I can hear you.
Yeah, there was a question on the chat section from Morris. So Morris is asking, I'm just curious, like JavaScript, you can write if without else. So can C# do the same?
Yes. C# can do the same thing. Okay, let me show that because that's a question somebody asking. I'm seeing another hand was up. So I noticed that I never spoke about the if statement alone. I think that's the question, right? The if statement without the else block. That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
So I'm going to scroll up. I think my screen is visible for my code. So where was our if statement over here? So I'm going to comment out the last piece of code that we did. So I'm going to go up again. And here we go. So we have this statement, the if else. So this was the code that we've written for the if else statement. So we were checking if a number is equals to this equals to 10. So for instance, I may only want to execute this part of code. C# is like any other language without the else block. I can say now if number is divided by 2 or modulus 2 is equals to 0, then it's even. Let's see. So this is like using if statements without the else block. If I do the .NET run, this case, you see it's an even number. But in this case, we didn't give another option. So if statement can be executed. The only difference between this kind of code with whatever JavaScript is that in JavaScript, we are using let. For instance, you could have said let number is equals to 10. But this can be JavaScript if we use var. But var doesn't mean the same thing with JavaScript. So this is same with JavaScript, only that JavaScript you can work without a semicolon, but in C# you must terminate. So sometimes C# is same as JavaScript and same to other programming language. So hope your question, Maurice, was answered. Okay, you have a hand up. Okay, proceed.
Korir, please unmute your mic and talk.
Okay, yeah. Hi, everybody. Am I audible enough?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, so my question is, okay, I know that like JavaScript is mostly used for the front end, like those mainly for front end. Okay, it's like, yeah, mostly for web, same as Python, which is vast. So I'm kind of curious to know what about C#, and are they in the same family as C++ and C? and what like could I really gain more in learning like C# and the rest of the C family?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good question, by the way, Corinne. So C# is a language mostly, if you're a web developer that you've come from doing most JavaScript, you will find C# in different places. So C# is a family of .NET, and .NET can be able to run in several platforms. Can be able to go to this site known as .NET, just type something .NET and open this. You can be able to explore like how C# as a language is the famous one amongst the .NET family. We have F#, we have and other even other languages. We have like even JavaScript being inside the .NET family. It depends on how you do it with. Continue with .NET, you can create something on the web, either front end or back end. Let's talk about backend. Backend is when you are dealing with creating of APIs. So you would like to have your API being created using C#. And this is mostly used by different companies. They use C#, they use Java to write their backend APIs. This is because all they have rich libraries and very secure to use, and most people always prefer to use it. Even though some people can still use Node.js, they can use Django for it. But for those people who love using C#, and that's what we should be covering in this series, we'll be able to create some APIs using ASP.NET Core. So ASP.NET Core is a framework, or yeah, it's a framework that is used to create APIs, and that's a C#. You can be able to create some front-end code using Blazor. So Blazor is a mixture of HTML, CSS, and C#. So people can be able to still do the same thing. We have, I think that's the two ways you can be able to use it. And you see it's available for macOS, Windows, and Linux. We have mobile development. So there's this, what do you call this framework being used for mobile development? Dennis, I think you interacted with that.
Is it
There's a
Flutter?
framework. No, Flutter is that, but C# has something that you have. You can also deal with mobile while using it.
Blazor.
Yeah, Blazor. So what about front end? No, Blazor is for front end.
What
But
I know about C#, we have this framework called .maui.
Yeah, .maui. That's exactly.
Yeah, which has it's a cross-platform, where you can build your project, and you can, with just 2 lines of command, you can build an application for Android, for iOS, and also for desktop.
Yeah. So we can say framework for mobile. Let me ask Copilot. So this Copilot is available for you, especially if you're using Microsoft Edge. It's called .NET MAUI, exactly. So this one that you can use, and we have another known as Xamarin. You can also build some cloud native applications. So we shall be talking about even the .NET Aspire. It's something that's cloud native, and it's something that's going to be launched. I think it has already been launched, but it will be the talk of .NET Conf. We have microservices, whereby you can be able to run things like Dockers in containers. So C# powers several things. We have also some with the desktop. Like for instance, these are Windows operating system. Most of the code or the applications that you're interacting with, whether it's Microsoft Edge, you've interacted with SharePoint, Word, all of them, most of them, they are developed using C#. So there's also always a framework for that. So we can use them for machine learning, game development, and mostly we use Unity framework, and that uses C#. So C# is all over the place. You can run it with almost everything that you need. So as a C# developer, you have quite a lot of opportunities that you can have in your disposal. I hope, Pauline, I've been able to answer your question.
Yeah, you've answered it very well. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm a JavaScript developer. Just that I've decided to move in and also learn something different. Like apart from JavaScript, what else do I know? So I decided to go with C#.NET because always when you're learning a programming language, you always have to target between the companies that are close to you. What frameworks are they using? And if in my guess, the companies that I'm targeting, mostly they're using C#.NET to create their backend APIs. So that can be a requirement for a job. So if you're looking for a job in a company that's you're always intending to work for, just look at what languages they're using. If they're using JavaScript, if they're using .NET, Java, all that. So, and C# is part of the C family and the C++ family. Yeah, and it came quite a very long time ago. It was after Java, C# came. Just that C# you could just write it using Windows operating system. So that made Java to become more famous or more popular. But nowadays, I think beginning there was a time when now you can be able to write C# in any operating system. So Maurice, you had your hand up. Omolo is still there. Any other question from the chat?
Okay, from the chat, it was only that question from Maurice, and at the
Mm.
same time, I've seen him raise his hand. I don't know if he's available. He can unmute and ask. Hello, Maurice. Can you unmute and ask your question? Okay.
Okay, I was asking about, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I was just curious. So like JavaScript, you can write if without an else. So is it possible C# to do the same?
Oh yeah, I think okay, yeah, it's possible. I think I've also demoed the same thing. Were you in? I've just answered your question with the code, just right about now, some 5 minutes ago. Were you in?
No.
Okay. Yes, you can be able to write if statements without the else block. Like for instance, I was able to answer a question with this last example. So I'll be able to use var number that's equals to 10. And you can be able to check for the condition if it's divisible by 2 and the answer is maybe 0, you can console.log, that's an even number. So in this case, I don't have the else block. And whenever I run this code, just like JavaScript, or any other language, by the way, the if statement by itself can serve a purpose. You can see it's an even number. So you can be able to run if statement without the else block. It's just that else block gives an option. If certain condition is not met, it's always good to give a user some information about it. And I've seen Maurice appear in most of the sessions. You're still typing, okay. I hope it's clear. You can also still unmute and be able to communicate.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So there was something that I was communicating to you on C# Foundation with Microsoft. You can be able to get this certification by just go to your browser or the link that I shared. I've just searched for C# Foundational Code Camp. So it will bring you to this course over here. So this is an extensive course that can help you have that fundamentals of C# in your fingertips, like introduction to C# for in this case. You can see everything is being ticked because I've done all this. So I can say I want to perform string formatting. I've been able to do this string formatting even when writing this code. You see, you have to like perform this on Microsoft Learn. So click on this link whereby you're supposed to read about string formatting, and it's happening on Microsoft Learn over here. So Microsoft Learn, you have to create your account. This is my account. However, it's my Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador account. You can be able to start reading more of this. So you see, it's very extensive. You can learn about this going to the next page. We have almost 8 pages of this string formatting alone. So with this, you can keep on learning and learning until you completed all these modules. You see, you are at this point whereby now you are given an editor. Whatever is loading over this side is an editor. Like they are giving you some code that you're supposed to copy. Just paste it on the editor, try it out if they work. So this can be another way for you to grasp these concepts if you have a challenge with them. So after you complete that, just tick on this that I have completed the modules on Microsoft Learn. There's a system that's going to check if indeed you've completed this exercise over here. So you can't lie to FreeCodeCamp that you've completed, yet you've not. And then you can now be able to answer this question, if this is the answer or this is the answer, check on it, check on the answer, proceed to next. And you can see this is the right answer, submit the challenge. And then now you can proceed to, yeah. See, now you have like almost 2 or 3 questions. You will complete that. After completing it, you move to the next module. So you have several modules. So it can take you, if you are like doing this intensively, you can take up to 2 weeks. So this is the first module, writing a C# code, creating a simple console application. That's what we've been doing, console app. Adding logic to your application. That was about operators. We covered this last week. Working with variables and this, we'll be able to touch on it. You see, it's not something that's hard. Creating methods. So methods like console.writeLine is a method. We've covered most of them. So we've not. So I think also during the session we debugged our code, but there's still some other ways to how you can debug your code. So it's very important for you to also get in depth, learn from the ones who created the language, and you'll be able to get this. Then lastly, you see you have the foundation with C# certification exam. So this is an exam you can take. I think it's having how many questions? 70 questions. You see you have the instructions over here about it. It's 70%. I did this exam with some few minutes. You can see you have the question over here, like what's the syntax of how to return a method in C#. You answer it, go to the next question, answering the next question until you've completed like these 80 questions. I did this in April. I scored 80/80 because it's these choice questions. Like if I say return value, I'm going to the next question. You can go back to the previous if you wanted to. So you'll be able to answer it, go to the next. So do your best when answering these questions, and at last you'll be able to get a certification in this. Yeah, I think I've covered most about this. And as promised, I said that anybody who completes the certification between this span of between September and November before the conf, you're going to get something as a prize. One is a LinkedIn Premium because we are hosting these sessions and reporting them. There's always an award of the LinkedIn Premium, and we have during the .NET, we hope also to get some swag for that, so that we can be able to share it with our attendees, and you can get something that you can have and be proud of. Above all, it's not all about swag and that. It's also about learning these things, being able to use it to solve solutions and other problems. So at this point, I've covered most of the things. So since I've seen Maurice and Kipkorir, you've really been active. I think Kipkorir also you were in my other event recently. So I'm going to offer a voucher. I'm expecting some 2 vouchers. So since between this span nobody has done the certification, the 2 vouchers will be awarded to you. So please be able to reach out to me through WhatsApp. I think we had the same group, the C# series group. So please reach out to me, have that LinkedIn Premium, and always use LinkedIn to benefit you, because it's a paid service whereby you can be able to learn. It has different courses. Once you have LinkedIn Premium, you stand out even when applying for jobs and other opportunities. yeah, be able to reach out to me and I'll be able to follow up and then award you that detailed email. So at this point, let me load the last piece of slide so that you can know what's next and who is going to take you through the next session. Yeah, the next session will be about collections. And if there's something that Molo Ganda is going to add in to make that session go as expected, he's going to take you through this session. I hope Umolo, you're ready for this next week.
Yeah, I'm very ready.
Yeah, so he's
Thank
going
you.
to be taking you through this session. So next week, let's also come in, let's learn something, and yeah, be able to do those 3 quizzes or challenges. I may not be able to like check if you've done it, but if you've tried them, it's all good because you're trying to practice C#. Thank you for attending. I hope to see you next week. Let's continue. If you have any challenge, let's use the WhatsApp group to communicate. And if there's anyone who is not available in the group, you can reach out to us through the chat. For any questions, you feel welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.